Welcome to the Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast, a show created to help painting company owners build a thriving painting business that does well over $1 million in annual revenue. I'm your host, Brandon Pierpont, founder of Painter Marketing Pros and creator of the popular PCA educational series, Learn, Do, Grow, Marketing for Painters. In each episode, I'll be sharing proven tips, strategies, and processes from leading experts in the industry on how they found success in their painting business. We will be interviewing owners of the most successful painting companies in North America and learning from their experiences. In this episode of the Industry Partner Series, I will be hosting Annie Newton of ProfitWorks. Annie ran a 2-location painting company with her brother out of Washington State called Four Seasons Color for 18 years. She now runs ProfitWorks, a company that offers offshore services as well as controllership for painting companies. If you want to ask Annie questions related to anything in this podcast episode, you can do so in our exclusive Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast forum on Facebook. Just search for Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast forum on Facebook and request to join the group. Or type in the URL, facebook.com/groups/Painter Marketing Mastermind. Again, that URL is facebook.com/groups/Painter Marketing Mastermind. There you can ask Annie questions directly by tagging her with your question so you can see how anything discussed here applies to your particular painting company. Thanks for joining us, Annie.
Of course. Thanks for the invite. This is pretty exciting.
It's very exciting. Yeah, you and I have been crossing paths for a number of years. We hung out not too long ago, and I think you have a ton of wisdom to share, and I'm honored that you decided to come on the show.
Well, you better, after how many years in the industry? 22?
Yeah.
You don't have wisdom.
Something's wrong, right?
Something's wrong.
But there are people who have been in this industry for a lot longer who I think have a lot less wisdom.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I don't think we're so different, but to some degree, pain is our guide, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So let's get into ProfitWorks. Tell us a little bit about what this is.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity to put maybe a little spotlight on something that our industry hasn't done a ton of, and that is looking at offshore or remote roles that can service our companies. I think we are probably one of the last industries to say, hey, could this be a benefit? What might it look like? That the big companies years ago, about 25 years ago, is really where the roots were planted in the Philippines, especially. That's the country that I'm a little partial to. And the big guys did it, right? The banks and Amazons and all the tech. They moved their entire corporate centers there. And those are BPOs. Today, we have the opportunity as an individual painting company to say, I need a person, and be able to resource a person into our company. So I think that's maybe a little unique about what I'm doing. It's not super new to me, if I may speak to that. 9 years ago was my first hire out of the Philippines. It was I'll so date myself. I went and purchased 2 books, and I read up on it. And I think I can do this. So after reading 2 books, I took the leap and encountered a sourcing service. My first hire was a total flop, and it was my fault. I didn't realize that some of the complexities of when you have someone remotely working in your business, the systems and the processes you need. So what do when you fall down? You get back up. So the second hire, and she's still with us today, 9 years later. She's promoted into multiple positions. So that's a little bit of not super new to the painting industry, but at the time, I probably wasn't telling others about it because it seemed like such a wait. Someone from the Philippines is running the back office of your painting company. I don't know about that. So it was a little bit of on the down low until others started that I benchmarked our numbers with. They were tapping me on the shoulder. What are you doing? Oh, and we run 2 things in pain. And it was a painful position. We had just acquired our second location, and the buy wasn't quite what we thought it was. And overnight, I needed some resourcing that I didn't have, and that was a little bit of the solution. So that's the remote services. We kind of have 2 things we do. The other side of the business is controllership services. So you could think of it as accounting with controls and process. So once a company has scaled to a certain point, they often find themselves the owner that used to sit behind the steering wheel and crank out payroll real quick. Now you have multiple people who are running your company, and you don't feel like you have a grasp on the financials. And now when they tell you you can or can't do something financially, you don't know if they're right or not. And it's a little different than having bookkeeping services. That's great. Bookkeeping is super important. It keeps our financials sound. But this is basically writing a roadmap and then putting controls. Often we have clients who their people answer to us for process and controls when it comes to the financials. So we're training staff with various painting companies, and then they adopt the methodology we want to use, and then we do direct reporting to the owner. So as business get bigger, sometimes it's not a great thing that tons of people have access to all your numbers. And as multiple entities become involved with growth too. So there's some reasons for that, but that's just kind of tapping into the controller role I had for 18 years in the painting industry. I just kind of took that knowledge with me and said, huh, it looks like others might need that. So
yeah. So I am sure there are a lot of people listening who don't really understand what controllership is. I had my background's in finance, so I did investment banking for 3 years. I did private equity for 2 years, and I don't understand what controllership is. So I'm assuming the vast majority of people listening to this don't understand that. So let's get into maybe the specifics of when we talk about the systems or knowing whether or not you can do certain financial things. How, what does that look like, and how is that explicitly different from, say, bookkeeping?
yeah. Oh, good question. And we'll do our best here. It still may be a little fuzzy.
Okay.
A fractional, so fractional means someone not full-time in your business, but they carry a fractional role, often is a responsible role, a CFO, a controller. You're what many would consider is a fractional for marketing. So you put on that marketing hat and you know all things marketing, you can speak to it and you do it well. And the parts that you don't service, you have formed relationships and partnerships with others. But if someone was trying to make all the decisions about marketing, they're going to be reading for a while and following a lot of podcasts to onboard and gain the knowledge that you have. So it's a trend. And I see what the future looks like, and even in our painting industry, we're going to be leaning more into fractional services. I know in my 22 years, it feels like the complexity of business has increased from what it was 22 years ago. So we're greatly benefited with all the mini platforms that our field is running around with. iPads. 10 years ago, we launched that, and that seemed like a huge move to go from paper to iPads. But with it has come some complexity. And so it's nice to have someone who maybe can speak to the numbers and then be your translator with your CPA. And then put some of the controls in place. How do you locking treasury services? So one of the things that we do is we pay everyone on behalf of our owner. So it kind of is a shield of protection when it comes to money. We've seen a few of our clients be hit with some fraud in the last 18 months. Everyone has seen the scammy stuff. Call me right away. I can't get to my phone. And wire these funds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. We had our first instance 2 weeks ago of payroll fraud. That's the first time we've seen payroll fraud. Excuse me. What it looked like is someone had their direct deposit. The employee had their email hacked. They then emailed HR and said, hey, can you please change my routing number? My banking information has changed for this week's payroll. Because they had access to the employee's email, they could see pay stubs are emailed at this time bi-weekly. The payroll was rerouted. It went to a platform it's an international platform, and gone was the paycheck, and it cannot be retracted by Intuit. It was an Intuit payroll. So fraud is kind of knocking in all kinds of places, and it's not very lovely. So
Yeah.
Controllership services is putting processes in place. So that is a stop.
Yeah.
And there's some controls around money as opposed to what just happened with the money. Is being very intentional with it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a very proactive process. I think anything you can do to prevent fraud right now is important. We're seeing a huge uptick in Facebook and Google, and just obviously text fraud. And that's why the 10 DLC, if you're doing any sort of automated text messaging, you have to register there because they're trying to cut down on spam and fraud via text. It's gotten a little bit out of control.
For sure.
But one of the things you said that I think was really interesting was this idea of that we're moving toward the trend in the industry is more toward fractional services. I agree. I think everything, peer-to-peer sharing, right? So Uber, things like that, Airbnb, all that's peer sharing. And then I think fractional services through fractional CFO, CMO, right? Just kind of what we would be, chief marketing officer, or marketing agency. And then through controllership, through things like your offshore talent, offshore services. I think it is the most efficient path forward. And as the complexity of business continues to grow, there's just more skill sets that you need. Right? And so running a painting company used to be a little bit simpler than it is today. Now, well, are you good at Facebook? Are you good at TikTok? Are you good at these CRMs? Do you understand these automations? And on it goes.
I think about how reasonable your services are as a fractional CMO. That if we were to, as a painting company, if we were to employ you for full-time in our company, how cost prohibited, and think about how large the size of your business would be. That's also true for CFO. Are we in need of budgets and cash flow projections and cash position reports and negotiating with the line of credit with the bank and other things? We are. Most painting companies could not afford to have on their payroll full-time.
Sure.
Even if you have the 150, 170K for the full-time to sit on your payroll, then you have the other variable is how uniquely do they know the nuances of our industry, and that industry knowledge. So it's neat to see what you're doing and how you're leveraging that. And I love how it's really winning in both ways by the dollar, but also the pulling the pressure off of owners to have to manage a role that is somewhat difficult to manage when they know more than you do about a certain topic.
Sure. Yeah. And I think the fact that you have that extensive background in painting, right? And you serve the painting industry and focus on that. I haven't found, I guess, industry agnostic. So companies that serve all kinds of industries, I just haven't found that same caliber. I'm around a lot of marketing agencies, accounting companies, all kinds of different companies for all kinds of different verticals. And I have yet to see that same quality matched by companies that just do everything. Right?
Yeah.
Over any kind of industry, because you do really have to have that expertise. Like for the stuff that you guys are doing, for the safeguards and the processes, it is not going to be the same for a painting company as maybe for some kind of medical practice or, landscaping company. All that stuff's going to be different.
For sure.
Let's get into something that I think is really interesting. And I'm actually seeing a lot of painting companies wake up to this, but I think it's very misunderstood or not really understood. Is the offshore talent, right? I think some people just have a negative sentiment towards it. Some people just don't know how to do it or how to go about starting it. They're open to it. Let's get into that.
Sure. Well, let's start in a mutual starting point here. The negative bias has been earned. If you've had a phone call to a support desk, name the company, and it's been less than a stellar experience, and you might have been just about to lose it as you're asked the same question for the fourth time because they are looking for the right script to then give you an answer back. When we think international, sometimes that's the image that just popped up, or the memory of, I about lost it on an 1.5-hour phone call, right? And we're pleading for them. We're trying to think of some complex question we can ask that then gets them out of that phone tree, and then we're transferred to the US. And we do those tricks with banks. It's like we can drop keywords and suddenly the call has been transferred to Florida. Oh, how nice, right? So we know how to game the system a little bit and get what we need. But I think it is such a disservice to some of the talent that is out there. One of the most common terms out there is VA. That's a pretty familiar term, and you see it in the painting forums and other things.
So you're saying virtual assistant.
Virtual assistant. But VA, there are virtual assistants, but that is a title and a word that's being attached to some real talent.
Like a high-end web developer creating these
like
really
a high-end web developer.
Just because they happen to be in this other country.
Right. We have over 20 civil engineers on our staffing, and they're referred to as VAs. When I look at their education, it exceeds mine significantly. They're in a civil engineer, some are a civil and a mechanical engineer. And so I kind of wince because I feel like that's someone walking into a very professional setting and assuming someone's a front desk receptionist when they have invested heavily into their education track. So the future is bright when it comes to virtual services, a remote role. COVID broke the zip code, and it was kind of a great thing. And I was involved in this before COVID happened, but I think it really made people go, wow, when our people had to work from home, this is interesting. Now I'm going to consider other options. One of my favorite things is the game isn't really for us to go find someone for $5 or $3 an hour, as we all hear. Oh yeah, for $3 an hour, you can get someone who will run the whole back end of your painting company.
I think for $3 an hour right now, you're gonna maybe.
Yeah, not quite sure how that one maps out. That still makes me scratch my head. I certainly know that there are those price points, but instead, if we looked at the talent first, I think that's really important to look for character fit. Are they going to embrace our culture? I encourage our clients that if they have a wall of their staff lined up on the wall, and they celebrate their staff as you walk in the door, you can see the 8x10s lined up on the wall, that if they have someone virtually, their picture should be there too, that it should be that enmeshed in their culture, not someone, it's not a robot, but someone without relationship. We're also going to look to see how can this is about leverage. So the business processing centers in the Philippines, they're vast. And significant amount of dollars in training have been put in. So on their own dollar, they went and got their degree, whatever, and multiple degrees. But then under some of these very well-known firms, they got years of training. And their training was on someone else's dollars. So when we directly recruit against BPOs, and our calling card is you could work from home. We may ask you to work the graveyard shift, so mirror our shifts. So you're on our time zone. But we're saying, let's go compete with them. If we give an offering that is the same as the BPOs, and one of the little secrets is the HMO. The private HMO is available to 2% of the country. And it's the Cadillac of health plans. They even send you a birthday cake on your birthday. I don't think they do that here. If you need LASIK eye surgery, included. So it's really a Cadillac healthcare plan. And they will stay with up to 2-hour commutes each way at a job like that because of that healthcare plan. And it takes a lot of work to be able to make an offering like that. But now that we're able to have that offering along with work from home and have a quality of life, many of them used to live in Manila. They find themselves moving back to the Providence where they're with their family instead of sending money back. And they've doubled their lifestyle. And so that's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to be able to go, how can we be shiny and get in front of some of the best talent that is deserving of a much better quality of life. And that's been very, very rewarding.
So let's clarify, what are BPOs?
Business processing centers, operation centers. So they're the Verizons, the T-Mobiles, and if you look at a map, downtown Cebu, Manila, there's high rise after high rise, and they're just full of people. So the number one service that the Philippines provides to the world is offshore services. So these are the hubs, and many of them are owned by, large international companies.
Got it.
And so it's like we're peering in the window, we're looking out at the 40th floor and going, one of your talents there, I think we'd like to give them a little invitation to consider something different. Yeah.
You're able to go head to head with these large tech companies, telecom companies, because you can now offer them this healthcare option, which is largely unavailable. Right.
And we're paying their healthcare option. That's the Philippine government. We're paying their retirement. It is quite a long list. So they don't, sometimes if someone considers themselves as a freelancer, to freelance is almost, for them, it feels like without a safety net. And that can feel a little bit scary. It can feel like I might make a little more than I did at my normal job, but what if something happened? The Philippine country is a social country, so they're kind of used to a ton of perks and benefits that equal almost nothing of value, but the list is really long. And it makes them feel I wouldn't describe the country as having an entrepreneur spirit. They're really, a good citizen is one who works hard. That's a little bit of the culture there. And what we can offer is maybe a little bit of blend of the both, the best of both.
A good citizen is one who works hard. That's pretty good though, in terms of what a painting company might be looking for. Someone reliable who invested into their work. So what are the positions that you find, for a painting company where they might be able to fill with offshore talent, really help their company?
I won't go in order of importance because I think it's dependent on the size of company, right? And what your needs are. Probably, let's talk about the role that will probably provide the most amount of leverage. Currently, that role would be an estimator. The other term would be a quantity surveyor. So if you're a commercial painting contractor and you do plan takeoff with OST or Plan Swift or one of those, there is a huge amount of upside to being able to not just get someone who does plan takeoffs. For that role, we're hiring either an architect or a civil and engineer. So you're getting someone with an incredible skill set with the expectation that they're going to help create the scope of work and all the things that are needed. That role is wildly successful right now. I'm looking at someone who's I regard as a marketing expert in our industry. And as we're looking forward, those of us who work with larger companies and who also see commercial, we see trouble is on the horizon. And trouble really started to rear up probably mid last summer when you've been awarded a commercial job. And those 3-week look aheads just look like they're forever reset. And the job isn't canceled, but it's like it's on ice. And it's not moving forward. It could at any time move forward, but really this has to do with the capital is not being released. And so painting contractors feel good. We look at our backlog and we're like, got a couple million sold. We must be good. Except that if it's not revenue ready, if that isn't actually going forward, we're in crisis as if we have no sales. So one of the strategies was, hey, could we look at double and tripling the amount we bid, intentionally land more work than we believe we can produce, knowing that what we think is landed work may actually be awarded and not actually executed. And with some of my larger clients, I'm seeing between 10 and 30% of their backlog. That is the story. And they've navigated and they're doing really well. And they're protecting the amount of revenue, all their budgets they built, they've been able to protect it, but they would be significantly down. And in this we've had such a run of amazing years, haven't we? Financially speaking, all that build and building their management team, all that build and building their infrastructure is threatened right now if they can't maintain the revenue. And this is just a strategy. It's about 29 cents on the dollar for a price comparison that they can go input someone into that role and double and triple the amount that they're bidding on. And then the flip side of that is be able to take advantage of when the phone rings and there's an addendum, there's a change, and they need it like noon tomorrow because the board is meeting. Can you get those in? At that point, you're their person. And the number could actually be really good if you could suddenly throw on hold everything you're working on and pump out that number for them. So there's also the upside of you can capture the opportunities where there's really good gross profit.
Yeah. So I want to clarify a couple of things. So when you say trouble ahead, you're essentially talking about a potential economic downturn.
I am.
Okay. And then the position that you were speaking about was an estimator for a commercial painting company.
Yes.
Are you seeing positions for, let's say, a residential painting company where they might be able to say, okay, the economy might get pretty dicey. You and I were talking a little bit before the start of filming. Marketing always becomes more expensive in the second half of an election year because all this money gets poured into all the different paid ads platforms. And then people tend to close more slowly because everyone's sort of waiting with bated breath. Let's see what happens. Is the world going to end this November or not? And so what can a residential painting company owner who's listening to this, what could they do? What does your service offer that might help them either reduce costs, reduce risk in some way, or increase their sales to help offset this potential downturn?
Yeah, we're seeing several right now. one of the moves so let's go into the marketing arena right now. Some of them is looking at the pay-per-click, and their heart is stopping when they see how much money was allocated last month, and they can see the direct relationship to the leads.
Yep.
That's a really rough place to be in. And they're saying there has to be another way. We're really not built to get the lifeline of leads cut off. The firm that the client that I speak of, they leaned in a couple of months ago and said, we're going to hire a marketing content manager, and that's all they're doing. Now they still have their other marketing services, but they're leaning way in with their eye on pay-per-click being in a real struggle position. And it's looking to be a very smart move. If by size of the company, size of company that you have, that doesn't feel like a fit, then maybe you're looking at either production coordinator role, back office services. You're looking to see, well, maybe a company has, you have an amazing team member. When that phone rings, they light up, they were creating the experience, but she's pulled away for the other 52 tasks we ask her to do throughout her day, from payroll to enter in the Sherwin-Williams invoices to all the things. But when she's on the phone, it's gold, and everyone remembers her name. Well, if we had to pivot and she became a little more outbound in her efforts, would that be a good exchange? And then those very tactical tasks became a back office service. Many times, what we haven't seen is clients come to us and say, hey, so Sally and Joe, we want to replace them with someone $5 offshore. Now that would not be a fit for multiple reasons. That's not what we're seeing. What we're seeing is Sally and Joe may have a unique skill set. And what would it look like if primary part of their role is to create an experience? Then those other things that keep them from those follow-up calls and other things is being done by others. So it's not that our service isn't here to replace who you have in office. Sometimes our service is here to help you rewrite the roles and really lean into the strengths of whoever is on your team.
Man, I love that. I love that holistic approach there. I think that is the common perception, is that, hey, the remote talent is there to do what your current team is doing, but do it more cheaply. And the hope is that they don't do a bad job, right? But the expectation is that they will. And I think looking at it as, hey, let's figure out the real skill set of the team that we have, and let's get maybe a little bit more of a sales first mentality, looking at, okay, a potential economic downturn. Let's get, best defense is a good offense. So let's figure out how to sell. Let's prioritize that a little bit more. And let's take some of these maybe more mundane tasks that would be transferable, and let's hire someone through your service who might not be a $5 per hour person, but probably going to be considerably less expensive than if they were needing to bring in someone full-time in the US to do that.
For sure. And I think we often spend some time on the discovery call talking about what does good look like. If a painting company is considering this, we're going to talk about who's currently on your team. What we're going to almost always predict is there's going to be some level of anxiety and there's going to be some crossed arms, and there's going to be like fun. You tell me this is what they're doing, you're probably actually stealing my job, right? Like, let's not pretend these fears and anxiety isn't largely at play.
Sure.
And we really want to see the owner speak into the strengths of his team and call out the strengths, and then point them to where the future destination is and how their success is dependent on a successful onboard of this other role. That's how you win. But there's a little bit of finessing in it, because it's, can't believe you crossed over to the bad side, just like all the big corporations. I see what you're doing. I've had almost verbatim things said like that on a call. And those are really fun to unpack. And some of the ways that we unpack is, let's talk about the pain. What keeps you from being really successful in your role now? I hear you're really valuable. He wants you around for a long time. Can we talk about how do we draft a way forward? And I think it should always be with good in mind, as opposed to fear.
So I want to say something maybe slightly controversial or push back
Sure.
on a little bit, could it be a good thing? Right. So if you have somebody coming in who's hungry, who's doing a good job, could that maybe wake the team up, shake them out of a potential slumber? And if somebody can't handle it, maybe that person shouldn't be there anyways. Other people can, sort of find their real value there, because maybe they do realize, hey, if I don't produce, this owner could go find someone to replace me. He's not going to now, or she's not going to now. And I believe, this person that they're not going to, because I see this other person is doing the tasks that I'm not doing. These are separate things, but I also see that other person's doing a really good job. And so I probably want to do a really good job too.
Yeah, I think what that role means to a professional in the Philippines, they're holding a golden ticket.
Yep.
They just got private HMO. They have retirement. They don't have to go fight 2 hours of traffic both ways. They get to have quality time with their families. This is a dream job. There's not enough of those dream jobs available. This is a dream job. So you have someone who's sitting in that camp with just operating with such a sense of gratitude and loyalty. Kind of what you had just said, what we maybe see more of is this. Can I pick on a role? Let's make this palatable. I'll pick on a role. The classic office manager. Very important. The business cannot run without her. And she's related to the owner, and she's been there 17 years. That may or may not be a thing, right?
Sure.
And all things run through them, and they love the control that runs through them, and they kind of love the power. So the owner doesn't entirely have power over this role, because subject a little bit to her availability, what she feels like doing, and the amount of overwhelm that's currently going on. Well, we know this is peak season, so how unrealistic that you expect those reports to be done every Wednesday. Did you see we got 17 calls yesterday? Like, I know sales are important, so you have to pick. Did you want your report, or did you want me picking up the phone? I'm picking on a role, but just
Sure.
hear me out in this. Sometimes when we go, guess what? We have a solution. We're bringing you the help you've always said that you needed. And let's look at your role. And it says office manager. So it says you are responsible for. So it says here, responsible for, is that right? Oh yeah, that's right. And you peel away the reasons why they don't do the things they really don't want to do. Uh-oh, now this feels really uncomfortable. Now you're calling up the leading part of the role. They should be behaving as a leader. There's sometimes parts of the role that they're skirting, because, well, there's 26 Sherwin-Williams invoices to enter last night. Oh, okay. So that's why we're not prepared for a crew leader meeting. Yeah, that's why that's happened. So sometimes it goes and highlights that you have just removed their reason to underperform, and now they're not feeling so great about things. That's a coach up or a coach out moment at that point.
Yeah. So I think one of the things I've learned in my entrepreneurial career is really high performers love systems. They love clarity. They love accountability, because they level up to that accountability. And they love clearly defined goals and KPIs. And people who are somewhat underperformers thrive in chaos, because in chaos, they can just sort of say, oh, there's too many things going on, right? Or they can continue to try to take on more and more tasks to try to show how valuable they are through kind of overload. But the reality is, it's because they can't do their core job well. And so I think when you bring on a remote, let's say office manager in this example, and they're able to take some of these tasks that maybe were the reason that your office manager wasn't able to do X, Y, or Z that the owner thought was really important, yeah, it is going to bring clarity. And if your office manager really is good in this role, she or he will be happy, will welcome it. Might be sure a slight adjustment, but will ultimately rise to that occasion. If there's just a complete, burnout on the other side, then probably you didn't have a phenomenal person in there. And it's good to know that. It might be a painful thing, but if you want to move the painting company forward, you cannot be a babysitter to people who aren't contributing to the company's mission and moving forward.
Well said. Listen to you.
It's almost like I've gone through some of this.
It's kind of like a no or something. This is interesting.
But let's talk about the actual implementation of this. So people are listening, someone's listening, and they think, you know what, this makes sense. I've never done it. I'd like to try it. They reach out to you. You're
Mhm.
obviously well versed in this. You offer it as a service. You know the painting industry super well. What does that look like?
We'd probably go through a process of determining what roles should be considered. And some of the things we would take into mind is what's the size of their company? What type of work do they do? What is the current pain? And where's the upside? We have to identify upside and then come away with, you know what good looks like in 3 months. If we don't have clarity around that, I suggest that we just be put on hold until we get clarity. Because if we don't have clear, we could hire the wrong person. If we're not clear, we could get someone into place and then they're not given the resources they need to be successful. So some of a discovery call might be finding out, you know, peel it back. What platforms are you using? Are you really in a place where you can say pretty confidently that this could be rerun, this could be run remotely? For the things that can't be, do you have a good system in place? Who else in your office besides the owner wants this position? It's always a little bit of a, oh boy, here we go. When it's an owner reaching out and none of his staff knows, and he's going to surprise them.
Surprise.
Surprise, guess what? On Monday, guess who's joined our team? And we're going to keep it on the down low. And I just like to pop this on them. And I just want to see who rises up. That's probably a bad plan. I want to get a sense of, our team also really wants to get a sense of, well, let's just be frank. We're gonna identify the resistors. If someone says, oh, there's no resistors at all, I'm going to probably ask a few more probing questions because they are there. And then to what level of resistance? And if there is going to be active resistance, could it harm the business by moving forward? That'd be such a terrible thing that you go and secure services like ours, and in the end, it harms your business. So seeing the potential for, instead of like, yep, let's just get the sale and let's make this happen. I think sometimes I have to ask uncomfortable questions, and then I feel good that we did that. Because maybe we need 3 or 4 months to go clean up shop a little bit. Maybe we need a little more time to get clarity about roles. Yeah, if there's a resistor, the implementation can get really difficult.
Sure.
And I'll make it a couple-hour process every day to fault find and document everything extensively. What I just found was the issue, as opposed to working with this person, providing the training that's needed and really embracing them as if they had just walked in your front door.
Sure. Change can be painful, and sometimes the people who are a good fit at your company now are not a good fit at your company tomorrow. I agree.
Yeah, yeah.
We find with marketing, people come in and what they always want is more leads. That's what they think that they want. But then when you actually go into, okay, how many estimators do you have? How much availability do you have on your calendar? What's your close rate? What's your backlog look like? They start to understand that developing a comprehensive marketing strategy is a little bit more complex than we want more leads. And what you just talked about is, hey, they don't come and they say, hey, we need someone who's an office admin. Okay, great. We'll go get you someone. We'll bring them to you, and then we'll just sort of see how it works out. What you're doing is you're diving into the business. You're doing a full analysis. Your expectation setting. You're making sure it actually is a good fit, because it might not be. We also tell people, hey, this isn't a fit for you. You're not ready for this, right? So that's what a good company does. And that's what I love about your answer right there, was that most of it was not actually focused on the role that you're hiring. Most of it was almost like a business consultant, looking at their company from the inside out. And might be part of your controller services and background and just your process-oriented brain and experience here. But you're not going to go give them some position that's going to not be a good fit for them. I think that's really, really awesome.
Yeah, it's just so important because we may have a service, and I think all our businesses are built on people, and we're hoping to go recruit and source the absolute best that money could buy. I'm making a promise on the other side.
Yeah.
I lead with, we have team members who've worked for us for 9 and 5 and 7 years, and they've had advancement from within. They've been able to see the upside to this. And I feel like I would be maybe selling something that wasn't true. And this is the business of people. So when we get to the final stage and we're doing our video interviews, part of my role is to boast about who their client is and what a unique thing they get to be seated with this client. that they're known as some of the best in the industry, that they're part of the PCA, that they contribute, that out of all the painting companies to work for, this is how they lead themselves. They're well respected. I've known them for the last 15 years. It's a brand I trust, and there would only ever be one of you. There's one role in one of you. This is a unique opportunity. I want to position it so we attract the absolute best, and they're bringing their talent and their experience of years and their education, as opposed to, try it on. If you don't like it, we'll just terminate them.
That was good. I'm about to send you a resume after we get off here. It was very good. Painting company are we talking about?
Yeah. It's fun. It's really fun. And then we have a couple of companies. One has 5, one is 3. A couple of them have 3 and 2 team members. So we have a couple that have multiple.
Yep.
That's fun. Now they're joining a painting company with a team from the Philippines. We have 2 that have intentionally hired that said, out of the gate, we're growing and we're scaling here. We built our budget to be this. This person, Annie, if you don't hire for this role, but you hire with a management and leadership capability that they've had prior experience of leading others, if you hire them for this, I think we could pivot. And I would like to see if they could come on with the knowledge of when we grow, you grow with us, and they would, under their direction, have another Philippine. So we have several clients who are now positioned like that, and that's actually worked out really well. It's such a great setup.
Yeah, I love giving people the ability to move up. I actually subscribe to the up or out. So I want people who want to move up. And if they don't want to move up, eventually they probably don't belong.
Yeah, that's a great way to state it. I might steal that.
Steal it. What you've said this a few times, and I think it's so important, and I think it's often overlooked. You said, what does good look like? What does that mean?
Well, you can apply it to anything, right? If we apply it to a role, sometimes we hear why someone needs a role really bad. Sometimes I like to run the other direction and go, okay, what would you terminate this person for? We usually have clarity about that. Sometimes we can have more clarity about what we invite them to leave over and be successful somewhere else versus, well, what does good look like? And if we can't define what good looks like, then I can't share with them at the beginning of the process that says, here's the stretch goal. Here's where we think, knocking it out of the park in your next 30 days looks like this. Arriving really solidly looks like this. And it's amazing what people will stretch for when they hear as a possibility for themselves. And I just think it's just super important in the business of people.
Yeah. And I like when you secure talent, right? For one of these companies, from one of your clients, you have a vested interest in it working out because your reputation is on the line on the other side, promises you've made, your character in a way, because you don't want to be misrepresenting the opportunity. So that should sound really good for the people who are hiring you, because you want, when you're hiring someone like you want there to be a vested interest. You want there to be an opportunity cost for you of some kind if it doesn't work out. That's the reason guarantees, things like that exist. It's risk reversal. You're carrying this risk with the client. You're both very much aligned in making sure this is a good fit, which is probably also contributes to why you do such an extensive process to making sure that you've identified the right role, that it is a fit, and that the company's set up for success.
Well, contrary to what you might assume, sourcing is actually very expensive in the Philippines. We have our own in-house recruiter. She's actually the one who hired on 9 years ago. And we've had to add to our sourcing staff, but it's very expensive for a reason that you wouldn't necessarily think. When you lay it all out, the commitments, what the role is, the position, and all the goodies that come with it. This is a sales ad. It's not a job description we're hanging, and we're hoping to attract the right person. Well, it's highly attractive. The downside, you have over 1,000 applicants for a position. And so we have to go through all these multiple staging to do the weeding and the filtering out. Hiring can go very fast in the Philippines. They don't have unemployment. So if you find yourself in a job gap, you're going to pivot really fast. And we might lose. But if we can speak to more than you're trying to land a job, we're hoping they've landed and found their career, that they want to be seated with us. But the downside to that is really, it is a lot of work to do the sourcing and the amount of talent. I'm not going to be sorry, but we're extremely critical when it comes to fluency. That's a really big piece to this. They can speak and understand English really well, but you know what? Fluency is what allows us to connect. And if we don't have fluency, then we have those pauses and we haven't quite built the relationships that we have with our peers locally. So the thing that will keep us from having really good connections is often fluency and not other talents.
Yeah, I think the fluency is so key. And I think that's what a lot of people worry about. You know, going back to your discussion, your example of the customer service experiences that we've all had that we didn't like, we wish you didn't have. That was a fluency problem. That was, we had a question or something we needed to discuss that was probably fairly straightforward. And it wasn't it wasn't matching up with the script or whatnot. They didn't seem to understand it. And it was really frustrating till ultimately we're, you know, in your example, transferred to Florida. And it's like, oh, thank God. I'm going to talk to somebody in the US who's going to understand, and we'll probably knock this out within a couple of minutes and I can go back to the rest of my day. So
Yeah.
that concern is why I think why there is a lot of resistance at times. That and the idea, which I think is antiquated and inaccurate, and you addressed it, but the idea that we're just trying to replace everybody, right? Like through ProfitWorks, we just want to have no one to have jobs in the US anymore. But I think the focus on fluency is really, really critical. And there are a lot of great people who are fluent.
It's amazing. It is amazing. And I think, you know, in general, whether you're talking about an offshore role or not, one of the best ways to protect our culture is be a culture of growth, that you've had mastery of your task position, whatever that looks like. And that should mean the next rung up on the ladder. But if we don't provide opportunities for growth, then it develops this scrappy culture that I'll turn my back. You know, we saw all the painters in the field, right? I'm going to load this tip on and he'll never know. Is it 517 or 515? He'll just never know. He'll just forever wonder. You know, we just see these behaviors like, if you know this, then how valuable does that make me? And a growth culture says it's so imperative you know this because we're going places and we need more to go with us. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Annie, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
Just a big thank you, and an encouragement, maybe some validation a little bit. There might have been parts of this podcast that sounded like, ooh, that just spoke to a couple pain points. But I feel super hesitant. My team, I have this culture. I have this culture that I don't think the offshore thing would be, I don't think you understand our culture. We're really tight. We're really connected. These hesitations and the pause, I just want to validate and say, it's okay. It's kind of a one-off thought to begin with. Maybe ask around. Maybe ask to speak to those who are doing it well. Not, hey, I've had someone for a month. How many years have they had someone? Because there's a lot of success stories out there that I think they're kind of quiet success stories. And that might be you.
I love it. Annie, thank you. It's always a pleasure to connect with you. Really appreciate you having you coming on the show.
Hey, thank you for the invite.
If you want to learn more about the topics we discussed in this podcast and how you can use them to grow your painting business, visit paintermarketingpros.com/podcast for free training, as well as the ability to schedule a personalized strategy session for your painting company. Again, that URL is paintermarketingpros.com/podcast. Hey there, painting company owners. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Give us your feedback. Let us know how we did. And also, if you're interested in taking your painting business to the next level, make sure you visit the Painter Marketing Pros website at paintermarketingpros.com to learn more about our services. You can also reach out to me directly by emailing me at brandon@paintermarketingpros.com, and I can give you personalized advice on growing your painting business. Until next time, keep growing.